We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet to share these conversations on the Vegan Compass podcast.
We extend our respect to elders past and present, as well as any of our listeners and guests. Hello and welcome to the Vegan Compass podcast, unveiling truths, inspiring change. We are your hosts, Rick Allport and Mackenzie Cross.
From wherever you're listening, please be sure to like and subscribe to support this podcast. Now to the episode.
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Vegan Compass podcast. We're so excited to have you with us today, your co-hosts Rick Allport and Mackenzie Cross.
And how are you today, Mackenzie?
Good, thank you. How are you?
I am very well and very excited about our guest here today.
Me too.
So we have Krystal Camilleri, who is here from Companion Cows and also Farm Transitions Australia. So Krystal, I've got two questions for you. Who are you and what do you do?
Hello, Mackenzie and Rick. Thank you for having me, first of all. Yes, so my name is Krystal Camilleri and I'm the founder of Farm Transitions Australia and Companion Cows, which are Australian organisations and charities. Companion Cows is a charity for rescue, rehabilitation and rehoming of dairy cows and their babies. And FTA is an organisation, the first of its kind in Australia, and we're supporting farmers to transition into sustainable enterprise and or exit the industry. So yes, very, very busy.
Very much needed services on both fronts. And you are an amazing friend of mine, Krystal. I've known you for a few years from our Townsville days. Of course, you're now in Tasmania. Yep. And I was super fortunate to visit you recently and meet your huge bovine babies, Frankie and Fletcher. So did you want to tell us a little bit about what motivated you to start Companion Cows and I guess why focus on calves compared to other animals that need rescuing?
Mm-hmm. So I guess it all started back in Townsville, Mackenzie, when we used to be on the streets of Townsville with our activism signs and videos on the street. Look, it's been a journey for the last 10 years. I went vegan just after my little boy was born. He's 9 now, 9.5. And and I guess I've tried all sorts of activism, everything you could possibly think of. And I guess when we moved to Tasmania, I was exposed to dairy country down here. And just a random series of events, we moved to some rural property here in Tasmania, my husband and my 2 children. And I've just always loved cows. And we just randomly rescued 2 bull calves from a nearby farm, Frankie and Fletcher. And I guess from there, being vegan, advocating for animals, I guess there was a side of me that I had a deeper understanding of these animals once I had them as pets or companions, raising Frankie and Fletcher, bottle feeding them, caring for them, and actually seeing that there's so much more than, even more than I could have expected as a vegan, having them as pets. And I guess also being a mother and understanding that bond with my children. And also just wanting to lead by example for my own children as well. I started on a journey, decided I was just going to start rescuing bobby calves. One thing led to another. And through that journey of being on farms and rescuing bobby calves, I started a charity called Companion Cows with my co-director, Phoebe Wiskin. We've rescued, couple of hundred cows and their cows and calves. But through that journey, I suppose, being on farms, meeting farmers and I started to also become friends with some of the farmers to try and understand the problem from their perspective. You know, we hear and see everything online from a vegan perspective, but deeply trying to understand what they're experiencing on the farm. And I guess from there, I really sort of started to realize on a deeper level that it's not just the farmers that are not just the animals that are exploited, but also the farmers and the land and the environment. And that it's a much bigger problem, to sit there and point the finger at the farmer. Quite often the farmer's suffering as well, and they're exploited to some extent. So how can we sit there and expect them to change when we're not offering any solutions for the farmers? So it was through that journey of rescuing calves and cows from dairy farms, hearing it from farmers, learning from farmers, and then really wanting to use my skills. I run a marketing agency, and I've worked with businesses all over Australia, how I could use those skills in marketing and business to help farmers who are in this position and want to get out. And that's when I started FTA, which is the first of its kind in Australia. And we support farmers who are looking to get out and get into more sustainable forms of enterprise, or just looking to exit the industry gracefully. So the two charities sort of run hand in hand. We assisted a dairy farmer last year to exit the industry, and through that process, he was very motivated by ethical, believe it or not, and we successfully rehomed, transitioned 48 lives from his farm before it was closed. So I do believe from the farmers that I've spoke to that some of them are motivated a little bit by ethical, that they do have a portion of their herd that are their favourites, believe it or not. And sometimes that can be part of the reason that's stopping them from exiting, amongst other things. So I do believe that having an option there for farmers to transition some animals out, but also to support them in whatever way, shape or form that they need help to get out of the industry is important. The two run hand in hand. And I also think that we can't sit by and just expect to transition the industry and not save any lives. Like I just can't sit back and do that. Yeah. So the two charities run hand in hand. Yeah.
So this is just amazing. And number one, I don't know how you have time to do all this. But number two, can we just back up into the companion cows area for a minute? Mm-hmm. And can you explain to us more about what is involved with the rescuing and the caring for calves, like collecting them from the farm, vet care, costs of feedings, caring, rehoming? What does that all entail?
Yes. Okay. We picked the hardest animal to rescue and rehome. There is a fair bit involved. I mean, we're talking about a huge animal when they're fully grown. So I guess what happens is we go to the farms. We learn. We've got a foster station here in Tasmania, and we have a sanctuary, which is also a foster station in New South Wales. And we learn what farms are in the local area, build relationships with those farmers, and then we go and get the babies from those farms. And they're 9 times out of 10, they are male. Sometimes we get the odd female calf. We take the calves, we bring them into foster care, and our co-director, Phoebe Wiskin, who is an absolute incredible human, I love her to bits. She is a fantastic carer, so she cares for the calves round the clock, gives them everything they need. When we first get them into care, there's generally a 1 to 2 week window where they're really high risk. So a lot of the calves that we get, because they're bull calves, they've either not had colostrum, which is absolutely necessary for their health and well-being and survival. So those first 2 weeks are quite critical, where they need, fluid supplementation and a lot of vet care and tube feeding and things like that. Once we get them through that 2 to 3 week sort of period, and when they're sturdy and on their feet, we start looking for homes. We have a very strict adoption criteria. We screen all of our adopters. They're forced to, well, not forced, but made to sign a legal binding agreement, which basically says they will not kill, milk, on sell the animals that we rehome. And basically we remain guardians of those animals for life. So if the adopter situation changes, it's in their contract that they must reach out to us, and we must be the ones to find them a suitable home. So we're always, in some respects, looking over them as custodians, guardians, to ensure that they don't end up in the wrong hands if the adopter situation changes. So last year we rescued and rehomed 85 lives, which was huge. Companion cows is in its second year, so that was a pretty big. We were tired and exhausted, but that was a huge year for us. So yeah, that's sort of companion cows, and companion cows does grown cows, calves, and we've also got a bull at our sanctuary, which no one talks about, by the way, in the vegan community, how the bulls are treated. His name is Max, and he's at our sanctuary in New South Wales. Yeah, so I hope I answered all your questions there, Rick, about companion cows. Is that sort of what you were looking for?
Yep. I'm sitting here being quite educated and fascinated with your journey, and what's been going on. Like the fact that you said that you saved 85 lives last year. That's just incredible. How do you find out about all these animals? What is the process in? Do people contact you, or do you hear by the grapevine?
No, look, we don't have a lot to do, to be honest with you, with the vegan community. We're more in touch with what's going on in the farming community. And that's been hard to wrap our head around at times as well, that quite often we get more help from the farming community than we do the vegan community in terms of finding these lives. We understand, I guess, well, because of FTA, we've got a pretty good understanding of the dairy industry and how they operate. And that's been really helpful because we understand when they're calving, what the systems are, they calf, how it works on the farm from that point. They've got to get them off the farm. Every farm works differently as well. So understanding those complexities of farming production systems. Some farmers send bull calves to slaughter at 5 days old. Others, depending on where they're located. So a lot of it's got to do with geographical. So if a farm is not located near a slaughterhouse that processes bobby calves, they will generally euthanize on the farm. So yeah, finding these farms, reaching out to them, letting them know that we want their calves. And 9 times out of 10, you need to remember these calves in the farmer's eyes are a waste product. They don't hold value, particularly when the meat prices are low. Bobby calves cost more money to feed and look after from their staff's perspective, and they hold no value, so they don't want to put the time into them. So for the farmers, from the farmer's perspective, they're a problem. They don't want them there. They're happy for us to take them. So yeah, and again, all farms work differently. So here in Tasmania, where I am, we have big, massive farms. So when I do a rescue here in Tasmania, I quite often am exposed to hundreds of calves in a paddock that are all going to die. Tiny little calves. I did a rescue, I think it was 2 years ago, and there was hundreds around me sucking at my clothes. And I knew that 3 or 4 days later, they would all be on a truck going to slaughter. Really? Other farmers, smaller scale farmers, particularly in New South Wales, where they may only have a herd of a couple of hundred, they're not calving big numbers. So what happens is as they calve, they put them in a pen and we're told to come and get them, or they'll kill them or send them to slaughter. So again, it just depends. Understanding the farms, understanding the location and where the farm is located, how they operate, their herd sizes is all really important information for us, because we then understand how much time we've got, how the farmer's going to respond to us, whether he's going to give us the animals, that sort of thing. Yeah.
You have so much knowledge that you've acquired from building these relationships with farmers. I imagine it can be quite challenging at times, I guess, with your ethics, and maybe from the outside looking in, you would assume that your ethics wouldn't align with a farmer. So could you tell us a little bit more about how you kind of go about building relationships with farmers in order to get to a point where they're happy to give you their calves?
Yeah, it's a good question. Look, I was raised in a rural country, property. We had horses, cattle. My friend had beef farms. I grew up going to rodeos, that sort of thing. So I come from that part of, that, what do you call that? That area, I suppose, or that sort of farming and rodeos and cowboys and all that sort of stuff. So I guess when I visit a farm, I tap into that, if that makes sense. And it's almost like you've got to get really good at removing your vegan cap and putting on your farmer cap, and somehow coming to this place within yourself to know that you're doing it for a much bigger reason. You know, you can't just go into a farm and say I'm vegan and that I'm an activist and that I'm, because it just doesn't work. You have to almost, you know, the farmers, remove all of the exploitation in farming. Most of them are really great people with great values, country people, simple people. And to be honest, I've got a lot of great friends now who are farmers who I know if I had problems with my own cows, I could ring and they would help me. So I guess that helps understand that I don't agree with what they do for a living, but in order to help the animals, you have to show compassion to the farmers. And I believe in some respect that liberation will come not by slandering the farmers and going around them, so to speak, but by holding their hand and walking towards liberation for the animals, by helping the farmers. So we can't just expect this thing to happen and not consider the farmers at all. So, yeah, I think it's about, for me, it's about understanding that, and that there a lot of good can come from having the farmers on side and being their friend. I've had, you know, the ripple effect that can occur when we are nice to farmers. For example, you know, the farm that we were supporting last year to exit the industry, that had a ripple effect on the transporter and the vets and everyone who we had to call on could see the work that we were doing and like, oh shit, you know, this is amazing. You know, the vegan working with the farmer, and there's no judgment, there's just support and kindness and compassion. And that has a ripple effect, you know. So I guess, yeah, going back to your question, sorry, I've rambled a little bit. Yeah, I guess it's understanding when you're on a farm and you're talking to a farmer that it's for a much bigger purpose, and the vegan agenda, or it just doesn't work with farmers, and it's not the best approach for animals at that point in time. Yeah.
So just doubling back on 2024, you had an amazing year with rescuing the 85 cows. You've recently done a rescue with 15 calves. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah. So Phoebe, our co-director, where we've got the sanctuary in New South Wales, we were made aware of a farm close by that was knocking them on the head, so to speak, when they just shortly after they were born. So we made an arrangement with the farmer. The farmer said, if you see them in this particular paddock, come and get them. If you don't come and get them, they'll be killed. So from the beginning of December through until just recently, Christmas Eve, I think was our last rescue. We rescued 18, actually, 18 calves from that farm. On Christmas Eve, we did 9 in one day. So Phoebe, my co-director, she did all the rescue and the care for those calves and did an absolutely incredible job. Yeah, during that time to care for them. Also, it was an absolutely huge job caring for 18 calves. Yeah, so did that answer your question? Sorry, Rick, about them. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Amazing. 18 little lives. Okay. So you've spoken a few times about the new sanctuary in New South Wales, but do you want to spell it out a little bit more for us? What is the vision going to be for this sanctuary? So
up until this point, we've just had foster stations. So a couple of our foster carers, particularly myself as well, you know, I'm only on 3.5 acres. And we never really had like a hub or a place where we could keep permanent residents. And Phoebe recently moved to a new property in New South Wales, which is now officially the sanctuary. We have 16 permanent residents so far that we transitioned from the farm that was exiting last year. And those 16 residents are made up of a couple of special needs cows, some of them have got like crippled, bad hips and bad shoulders. A couple of them are pregnant, so we're waiting for them to calve. We've also got some steers and a bull, actually, Max the bull, who was used as the cleanup bull, as they say, for the dairy farm. But the idea with that sanctuary is to be a permanent foster station for bigger amounts of animals, like what we've done over Christmas with the 18 lives, and also to be a sanctuary for special needs cows, they're blind or, you know, high risk cows that we can't rehome because they are too high risk. So also hopefully eventually that we can open it up to the public and be more of an education resource as well, because, you know, as you guys know, the best activists we have are the animals themselves. So allowing people to come out to hear their stories, meet, you know, the victims, so to speak, and hopefully make the connection that way. But again, we're only in our second year, so yeah, it's just baby steps at this point in time. Yeah.
So you mentioned something that sort of tweaked my mind. Cleanup bull.
Yeah, I did.
What is that
I
actually
didn't know
mean?
what that was either.
Oh, didn't you?
No.
Okay. What happens with some, again, it's really important to understand that every farm works differently. But for some farms, they will AI, as we all know what AI is, but AI isn't always effective. So what the farmers do is they have a cleanup bull that goes out into the herd, and any other cows that come back into their heat cycle that don't fall pregnant, hopefully the bull will clean those up, so to speak.
I see.
So that's his job. Now, some farms will have 2 or 3 or 4 cleanup bulls, depending on how big the herd is. So yes, that was Max's job. But lucky for Max, Max had a few issues with his manhood and could no longer be the cleanup bull. But lucky for us, the farmer loved Max and couldn't bear to see anything happen to Max. So now we have him, and he just roams the property with all his ladies that he can't do anything with. There's some manhood issues.
Oh my God. I did ask the questions.
Yeah, you went there.
Yeah, I did.
Because like I said, no one really understands that bulls are also a part of this problem. And quite often for the bulls, again, people don't realize, but they're usually isolated in a paddock on their own, and they're brought out when it's time for them to do their job, and then they're put back in the paddock on their own again. So quite often they live a very isolating life. So yes, we don't sort of talk about that, but it's definitely something that people are not aware of that we need to inform them about. Yeah.
So this is amazing work that you're doing. Now, within your work rescuing calves, that's inspired you to come up with this new approach that you've been talking about. So trying to get things at the grassroots level. Can you tell us more about how Farm Transitions Australia came about and what is actually happening with Farm Transitions Australia?
Yep. So yeah, Farm Transitions started, I guess, I started making the connection with a farmer here in Tasmania. I was rescuing some calves from his farm on an ongoing basis, and he was letting me take the milk from the vat to feed to the calves. But through that process, I was sort of going to the farm every few days and collecting milk. Very un-vegan thing to do, I know. But through that process, we got to know each other, and we started talking, and every time I went there, I was spending more and more time asking him questions about how he feels about farming and the struggles that he's facing. And one moment in particular, I remember I had taken one of his heifers, Maggie, who I still have today out there in the paddock. And I had a video of Maggie on my lap, and she was snoring like a baby. And I showed this to the farmer, and he had tears in his eyes. He couldn't believe that was the cow that he was going to send to slaughter. And it had an impact on him. And we started talking about, he started saying about how he's always found it hard when the chopper truck arrives, that he can't be on the property and he just doesn't want to do it anymore, and how difficult it is, and the struggles of dairy farming, and how he feels stuck and his children don't want, So it's sort of one thing led to another. And I felt compassion for him. I sort of started to see it from another perspective, but hang on a minute, there's more to this. Like, here we are as vegans pointing the finger saying, just change what you're doing and do something else. But it's not that easy. You know, these people are second, third generational farmers. That's all they know. That's who they are. That's their identity. And, you know, they're almost brainwashed in a way as well to think that what they're doing to the cows is normal. They love their cows, you know. So, you know, here I was rescuing calves, rescuing cows, knowing it was a Band-Aid solution and wanting to help so desperately. I guess I started to just think of ways that I could help this on a much bigger scale and attacking it from another angle. I guess I've done a lot of activism over the years, and I felt a lot of the times I was just beating my head against a brick wall. You know, like I just felt it wasn't quick enough. You know, these animals are lining up in a knockbox every day being killed, and we don't have time to waste. We need this thing sorted. So yeah, started to look into ways, researching different organizations overseas that are doing farm transitions, and come to the conclusion that, hey, we need to start something like this here in Australia. But I guess what I learned through my research was that a lot of organizations overseas are focusing on transitioning them into plant-based, but it's restricting the amount of farmers they can help, because not all farmers can transition into plant-based farming. You know, there's a lot of farmers who they're done with it. They don't want to see another tractor. They just want to get out of the industry and they want to do it gracefully. And in my opinion, we should be supporting those farmers and fast tracking the process for them, because every year there's more calves born into existence. There's more suffering. So it's something that if I can close a farm down in 3 years instead of 5 years, that's a huge win. You know, we've got sanctuaries set up all over the country rescuing animals, but if we can shut a farm down 2 years earlier than before it was scheduled to be shut down, we've saved hundreds of lives by doing that and stopped the cycle on that farm. So yes, FTA was about, you know, we talk all about the demand side of the problem, but no one's attacking the supply side. And I think that if we can show farmers some of that compassion that we have for animals, we can fast track this process. It's inevitable. Dairy's done. It's done. But we want to fast track it. We want it done in 10 years instead of 20 years, you know? So that's what I'm setting out to do, is support farmers through that process and make it happen sooner rather than later.
One of the reasons I love you so much, Krystal, is you're just so ambitious. Like, nothing is too big a task. I mean, I'm sure sometimes you probably think, why did I start to do this? It's too hard. But from the outside looking in, like, you're just so inspiring and you're such a go-getter and really tackling a problem that no one else has tried to tackle before in Australia. So props to you. But could you tell us a little bit more about how Farm Transitions Australia supports farmers to transition? So what other avenues? And I know you're working on the Farm Transition Hub, if you want to tell us more about that as well.
So I guess, yeah, for farmers, depending on what they want to do with their lives, I guess, we go in, well, they'll contact us. We go onto their farm, we understand the problem from their perspective. We ask them questions like, where do you want to be? What are you interested in? What are you passionate about? It's also about their family as well, because quite often they're impacted by the decision. And every farm is different. And I think too, we need to be mindful of that it's not a cookie cutter approach. It's a holistic understanding it from the farmer's perspective and then providing a solution for that particular farmer. So we offer direct support from a project management perspective, or we've got industry experts on our advisory panel, so financial advisors, Hemp Farms Australia, you know, anything really. We act as a support for the farmer, understanding what they need and what they need to transition or exit quickly. And then we go out and pull in those experts. And what it does is it frees up the farmer so he can continue to farm. I know that sounds terrible, but a lot of farmers are resource and time poor. And that's part of the reason why they're not making the steps sooner rather than later, is they don't have the resources or time to do it. So by having us on board, we can facilitate some of this for them and again, help to fast track that process. So that's, we provide indirect support or direct support. But the Farm Transition Hub, we did a survey of 150 dairy farmers in 2023, and we discovered that 85% of dairy farmers in Australia feel that they do not have enough information or support to make decisions about the future of their farm. So the Farm Transition Hub is an initiative we're trying to get up off the ground, just trying to get funding for it at the moment, which will be a free online resource for dairy farmers and all animal farmers, where they can come on and find everything they need all in one place. It's free. We've got mental health experts providing free counselling. We've got a free financial planner. There'll be a whole range of information on there that they can go to, whether they need direct support or indirect support. It's all there. And again, it's to help them fast track their transition or exit. And we believe through our work and the research that we're doing is over the next 5 to 10 years, the Farm Transition Hub will be essential and it's critical, and it should be something that the government is doing, not up to a small grassroots organisation like FTA, to be providing these resources and support to farmers, because the writing's on the walls. Climate change will have a huge impact on dairy farming, and they need the resources to get out gracefully.
So you touched on your long-term impact that you would like for Farm Transitions Australia, and you said 10 years, not 20 years, which I think is a great aim. But what do you see the impact on the future of Australian agriculture? And can you talk a bit about precision fermentation?
Yes, the word that we love. Precision fermentation will liberate dairy cows in this country and worldwide. I hope that is my prediction. I think it'll have a huge impact on farmers. I think that it's death by 1,000 cuts for the dairy industry in Australia. So right now you've got impacts of climate, you've got rising operational costs, you've got impact on mental health and well-being. Farmers are feeling isolated, lonely, no downtime. Farm gate prices are all over the place. You've had 11 dairy processors pull out in the last 18 months. So that's no longer there. And I guess the rise of natural disasters as well is going to have a huge impact on dairy farmers. It's going to have an impact on milk production, but also their ability to grow hay and pasture for their cows. So that's going to drive up their input costs. So I guess, as I said, again, it's death by 1,000 cuts for the dairy industry. Then on top of that, you've got the rise of precision fermentation, which will slowly replace dairy products. So, companies like Nestle can come in and instead of, getting their, products from cows, they're getting it for a fraction of the cost through precision fermentation, and the consumer has no idea. It's the same price, less environmental impact, and it tastes the same. So I think precision fermentation will have a huge role to play in the demise of the dairy industry here in Australia. But I think I see it sort of all unfolding in the next sort of 10 to 15 years. I think we'll see a major change. It's inevitable.
And for our listeners and viewers who don't know what precision fermentation is, can you just give a brief explanation on what it is?
Oh, Rick, Jesus. I'm not a scientist. No, look, so it's
scientist version.
Yeah. The layman's terms. So basically what it is a way of producing milk, which is biologically exactly identical to milk that comes from a cow, through precision fermentation. Don't ask me how precision fermentation works, but it's an old process that I think we've been using to produce things like medicine and cheese and beer and things like that. But it's a cheaper, more effective way of producing milk, as I said, for a fraction of the cost and with little environmental impact. So at the moment, there's a few startup companies in Australia doing precision fermentation. And I think the problem at the moment is scaling. I know that Eden Brew, I think they're about to release or soon to release, I think it's ice cream, I think. So taste the same, consumers won't even know the difference. Has all the same nutritional, so to speak, it's pretty much, it is. It's like milk from a cow.
Yep, this is going to be a huge disruption. And maybe it'll bring the 10 years down to 8 years. Let's see.
Let's go for 5.
Well, you've got companies like Norco who are investing in precision fermentation startup. So what does that, what does that sort of highlight, I guess? It's definitely the future, and it's a space to watch. But it's exciting. It's very exciting for animals.
Definitely. Okay, so changing tune a little bit, you've mentioned a couple of times throughout the podcast that it can be challenging to sort of balance vegan values with talking to farmers. Some vegans might criticise your work with Farm Transitions Australia for seemingly supporting farmers. Are there any misconceptions here that you wanted to address?
Look, I guess that my comments to them would be that what we're doing currently isn't working quick enough, and that I think that once they need to start to extend the compassion that we have for animals to farmers as well, because they are also suffering, and the animals need us to work with the farmers. When we work against the farmers, that doesn't help the animals. They suffer longer because of that. If we get in and help them and show them that we want to help and we're here to help, and fast track that process, we're going to save a lot more animals, than what we would if we stood back and just pointed the finger. And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of farmers doing the wrong thing. There's also a lot of farmers who want to get out and they need support. They don't need judgment. It's not helpful in these situations. So I think that for a lot of vegans, their style of activism needs to change in some respects, in that the language that they're using it's just not helpful. And all it does is pushes farmers away, and they just shut their mind off to change. If someone's telling them that they're rapists and they're murderers, how do you think people are going to respond? So I guess that's something that I would like to see to change, I guess, is that the vegan community need to be more open and understanding that there's another way to approach this, and that's through helping farmers and showing them compassion. We're good at showing compassion, but we're not good at showing it to farmers.
Yeah, very true. I was just going to say, I think when you're part of the vegan community, it can be very easy to sort of slot into these particular boxes that are very black and white. And you're very good, Krystal, at not being confined to a box and seeing things more objectively and in a productive way to achieve real change for the animals.
Yeah. I think I always say to Phoebe, and I say it to you as well, Mackenzie, we don't work for vegans, we work for the animals, and what would the animals want in this situation? What's going to help them? And that's how we approach things. The animals need to be the center of everything we do. It's not about us. It's not about ego. It's not about it's about what's the best for the animals. And I think that if we always lead with that in mind, we'll always do the right thing or go in the right path. What's that quote by River Phoenix? Run to the rescue with love and peace will follow. And that's something that I try and live by and remind myself of when I'm trying to help farmers, and I've just done a rescue and I'm not feeling awfully compassionate towards farmers, but understanding that there's a bigger thing at play here, and that the issue is not as black and white as vegans believe. And don't always believe what you see on social media, because quite often there's a lot of layers and it's quite a complex problem. So
I like your statement, we don't work for the vegans, we work for the animals. I think that's a really nice way to round up our interview here today, because that really does hit home. But before we finish up, how can people contact you if you want to be contacted, or follow your journeys on what you're doing?
Yeah, look, just please, we've got a really small following on social media at the moment, and we need people to go on and like and follow and share and comment. And also donate, please. So I'm a volunteer, and all of the work I do for FTA is voluntary and companion cows. And I guess if you can donate, please, that would be a huge support for us. We're trying to get the farm transition hub up and running, and I think the sooner we can do that, we can see tangible results from that, with farmers logging on and actually using the information to fast track their transition. So we see that will have a huge impact. So yeah, please, that's the best way. Reach out via socials or follow our social media or donate would be amazing. Yeah.
So what do you, for Farm Transitions Hub, what do you need? Do you need skilled people in helping you put that together, or?
So anyone, we're looking for accountants or vegan lawyers or anyone who can help within that transition process for farmers. So as I said, we've got a financial planner at the moment. We've got a counsellor. We've got Hemp Farms Australia. We've got biodiversity rewilding experts. We've got career path management experts. You name it.
Do you need people like graphic artists, or website builders?
Yeah, more graphic designers. Yeah, copywriters. Yeah, anyone like that would be really helpful. Agronomists. We need an agronomist on board. Town planner. Yeah, sort of those types of skills and expertise would be amazing.
Great. Well, we'll put all the links in the show notes so people can find you on social media and your website. I think that brings us to the end of this amazing episode.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. I am blown away by what you've been able to achieve and what you are achieving. And let's aim for that goal of 5 to 10 years of getting this industry shut down.
It would be amazing, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to talk about our work. Thank you so much for what you guys are doing as well. It's super important that we get the message out there. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're loving these conversations. We learn so much from everyone, and hopefully all of our listeners are learning amazing things too and feel inspired to advocate for animals in different ways, or are just learning about different topics that they might not have learned about before.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us, Krystal. It's been a pleasure meeting you, and I know Mackenzie has had the pleasure of knowing you for many years, and now I know where you two know each other from. So, so thank you so much.
Activism.
Yeah, thank you so much for being with us. And
bye.
Okay, we'll see you again.
Bye.
So, folks, that brings us to the end of another Vegan Compass podcast, and what an amazing episode this has been. So we look forward to seeing you all again in our next episode.
See you then. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening to the Vegan Compass podcast, unveiling truths, inspiring change.
Be sure to follow us on social media at @thevegancompass_podcast. See you next time.